My name is Jamie, and for most of the 1980s, I helped deliver over 3.5 million kilos of cocaine to every major studio, record label, and rock band in Los Angeles County.
Ian, David, and Quinn started out to make a $50 million movie based on Ian's book, TJ's War. Mark, Sia, and Sincera soon jumped on board, and then Mr. Z joined the team, a mysterious executive producer who said, "Stop, this is no movie. This is a 2-season, 20-episode TV show. So follow us, join us as we create TJ's War, the $50 million TV series."
Hey folks, welcome back to We're Gonna Make a $50 million movie, probably something even bigger, a 2-season Netflix or Paramount Plus or Apple TV production. Yes, we're serious. This is the podcast that explores the art, craft, and business of bringing ambitious stories to life on the big screen. Born from the pages of TJ's War, a sweeping novel of love, espionage, and the brutal cost of conflict, this series is about the journey of adapting a deeply personal, historically rich narrative into a major motion picture or TV series. Today, we're honored to be joined by Matthew Spradlin, a filmmaker, writer, and producer whose career spans over 25 years in comics, animation, and feature films. His work from Bad Kids Go to Hell to internationally distributed projects with Alibaba Pictures and EarthX TV demonstrates a rare blend of creative vision and technical mastery. A graduate of Nomon's prestigious VFX program, Matthew is trained under industry legends and brings expertise in animation, visual effects, and cutting-edge AI tools. Most importantly, he knows what it takes to tell a compelling story, whether on a tight budget or at blockbuster scale. Welcome, Matthew Spradlin.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Mark. Nice to be here. Hey, Ian. Nice to see you.
So, Matthew, as we embark on adapting TJ's War into a $50 million film or series, where do we begin? That is, let me start with this question. You've worked across comics, TV, and features. How would you approach adapting a dense, emotional novel like TJ's War into a major motion picture? What's the balance between fidelity to the source and cinematic pacing?
Well, it's truly that's a undertaking when you take a big, thick, like you said, a dense book with so much detail, and then you have to reduce it to let's just say, for the sake of the book's sake, let's say it's a 3-hour feature as opposed to like a series, right? But as a 3-hour feature. These days, given all the tools like AI, it's almost like you go, you write the script, you get all the emotional beats, everything that you feel like will fulfill, like on an emotional level and on a story level, right? But then this is just my personal feelings about this coming from the world of effects. Then you have to take that script and run it through the grinder one more time and almost chop it up like an operation, like a medical operation, as to on a tight budget, as to what you can get away with filming live and what can be an effect, a digital effect. And I'm going to lump in AI with that too. So do you know what I mean? It's almost like you go by scene to scene, shot to shot. We'll pull something like that apart.
I want to get into the AI aspect and the visual effects aspect a little later because I know that's part of your expertise, and we do want to pick your brain on that because this is a major undertaking. I mean, war scenes, and these days, do we need to film? Do we need 500 extras to film a war scene, or can we just computer generate it and it looks real? Hold on to that thought.
Sure.
The next question I want to ask is, the book, I want to ask as a writer, the book blends war, espionage, romance. As a writer, how do you balance these genres? Because those are different movies. How do you balance them?
You have to figure out exactly what's going to be the main genre. It's like when people say, is it a horror movie with funny elements or is it a funny movie with some horror elements in it, right? It's like you have to decide, is this a war picture that has some romantic elements in it, or is it a romance set against a war? Like, what is going to take center stage?
So you can't do all three, right? You gotta go down one avenue here.
I always, here's a good example, right? Was it didn't turn out, I'm sure, the way he hoped, was the Costner picture. The last movie he did, there was going to be a series. Like, he just tried to stuff too many things into that film, and it just didn't work. It was kind of a disaster, like on the cutting floor.
He's still going forward. Right? He's still he's doing the next two, right?
Yeah, and good on him for charging ahead. But that first story, you could tell that they got into trouble in the editing room. You can tell that they got into trouble because they tried to stuff too much story into that movie. And quite frankly, he should have stripped some things out of it to give more breathing room to the other things that are happening in the movie. Instead, it just becomes this series of, and this is what you don't want to happen. This is getting to your question. You don't want to end up with a script that's so dense that you just have scene. You know what I mean? And you never give the audience a chance to feel anything, actually, right? It's like, it's the big critique of like a Michael Bay movie, right? And by the way, that guy knows how to make a movie, and he made 13 Hours, and he gave that thing a break to another editor. You can see like how amazing that movie actually was. And it's a Michael Bay movie. He just wasn't, he just didn't chop it all up like he usually does, like a big kids movie. Right. So that's what I mean, is that you've got to decide what the story is. And then once you know exactly what the story is, then you can pull back a lot of the plot and chop a lot of the plot out of it.
Well, Ian, let me bring you in then as the author of TJ's War. What do you want to see? A war movie, an espionage movie, a romance movie, an anti-war movie?
Well,
pick one.
Before I start, can I just apologize for anyone watching this podcast? Because I was playing around with the visual effects and I hit blur and I'm blurred. So,
you're not here for your visual effects expertise. Let's put it that way.
But I'm thinking maybe I'll go for the Wilson look from Home Improvement, and I'll just be the mysterious character on the wall. I think that's too big a question. I mean, the book is out, the book is done, and it's really about the decline of a very beautiful young man over the period of the Second World War, and during that time, he's trying to maintain his sense of morality. He's trying to maintain this love affair with another agent, and all these things are happening to him while he's trying to remain sane in an insane, impossible situation. And I don't think that's changed at all over the last 80 odd years since then, and probably for hundreds of years before that. So that's the story, and it involves the World War, and it involves a lot of characters that people have heard of because it's a true story. Churchill's in there, and Roosevelt's in there, and so on. So it's very wide ranging, and you can pick, if you're going to do a feature film, then you can pick a particular story out of that and go with that. We're really much more focused, Matthew, on a TV series, and we've really identified that it's going to be a 20-part, at least 2-season 20-part TV series, and that's the treatment, and that is what we're about to go out to various streamers with and TV production companies with in the next month or so, having spent all of the winter and most of the autumn working on the treatment as part of the team. Because we want it to. I might be speaking out of turn here, but we want it to look like Shogun. Yes.
So you just pulled the net. That was absolutely the thing I was going to say.
Oh,
so
my God! Have you been talking before this?
Well, no. It's because I read the James Clavell book back in the day, and I also remember the original series that they did with Richard Chamberlain. And you can see that they didn't have the space for a lot of stuff. So they as much as I love the original TV series, as a kid, right? I really love the new series because they left so much more in from the Clavel novel,
Yeah.
right? Because because it is drawn out over that, all of that. So
it's really funny, Matthew, because there's a running joke on these podcasts for the last, I don't know, 3 months now, because every time Mark's on the podcast, which is about at least every second shot, he mentions Shogun because he's just so much in love with that TV series. So for you to back that up is just unbelievable.
Well, I mean, the thing, okay, so it is an inside joke, but I was serious when I said it. Like, I want the cinematography. I want to look as good as Shogun looks.
So, tell me how you got to where you are, Matthew.
Okay. So very quickly, when I got out of Chapman University, which is it was kind of a cool film school when I was there, but now it became the film school over the years. Jim Doty took a very aggressive stance with the school. But when I was there, it was a good film school, and they pitched us out to, even when you're in school, you're already working for different production companies. So you drive up from Orange County to LA, like all the time, every weekend. And you just got, like, I'm going to use the term pimped out. You got pimped out to the studios because you were working for nothing. You didn't care. You just needed to make connections. And Chapman was great for that. So I would work on all these music videos. I'd run errands at Paramount Pictures, Island Pictures, like whatever you could get, you were doing. And very quickly at that time, I saw that special effects, digital computer effects were coming up, right? And the nice thing was nobody was yelling at you with computer effects, digital effects, because they didn't understand it. And I was like, oh, that's what I got to do. I don't want a bunch of a room, where people are screaming at me.
Yeah.
So I got into that. And while I was doing that, at the same time, I started writing and just kept writing. And then I wrote, kind of like what you did. It was a story. It was a script about something I knew. And a producer caught the attention of a producer, a very good producer, Peter Heller, and big time producer. And he liked the script, and he said, it's great. The idea is great. It's just too long. So I think I made a script that was like, 190 pages or something like that. So So he took me aside with my co-writer and then sort of walked me through it. And that was sort of like going to film school again. So while I was working at production companies and doing the visual side, it was the writing side that I knew I could learn how to really craft a good story. But there are a lot of tips and tricks, and you learn this from this person and this from this person and the producer and you meet another writer, and then they talk you through a script. And so I kind of got on that side road while I was doing effects until finally it was, Comic-Con sometime around 2006 or 7. I pitched an idea for a TV show to Sci-Fi Channel, and they bought it in the room. So it just happened to be the right show at the right time. They loved it. And so I sold my first show, and that kind of got me also going. And at the same time, I forgot about this. You do so much stuff all at once, I did a short film that was absolutely ridiculous. It was a completely ridiculous. I just tried to do the most ridiculous short film I could think of, and it kind of landed on its feet. And that was 2000. So between the short film and then, doing this, you start rolling. And I had been in the comic book world. So I also wrote a comic book that did well. And then that led to the next thing. It just kind of built on itself until finally I could walk away. For the time being, I walked away from the effects world, which was.
Let me ask you about that pitch.
Sure.
How long did it last? Was it like a 90-second pitch? Were you already prepared? Did you have it memorized?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to say this never happens. Okay. But what made it so funny and made it so the pitch go so smooth was the producer, the head person at the time, which I believe was Mark Stern at Sci-Fi Channel, he said, before we get going, let me tell you what kind of show we're looking for. And then he described my show. So
Well,
that's how good the pitch was, is that he pitched my show to me.
So you won the lottery a little bit there.
I won the lottery. And then I turned around and I said, well, you just described, the series. And here's the guy. And at the time, it was, my favorite thing is to find the idea that nobody is looking at, right? It's hard to get away from derivative material, and it's like,
especially now. I feel like now it's so formulaic,
super formulaic. So, you try to find the idea that you can turn on its head, right? And they are out there. And also it helps if you're a bit of a cinephile and you take something from a movie that nobody remembers and nobody saw. Right? Yeah. And I've done that before, and nobody was the wiser. And then you flip it around and you make it your own.
Musicians have been doing that for hundreds of years. Why should you not?
Boy, have they, right? Led Zeppelin. So it was, I did win the lottery. And then I started laughing as he was describing, and he was just like, I looked at the person I was co-pitching with and I said, well, you just described our show. And then I gave him and it was probably 5-minute pitch.
5 minutes.
Yeah. 5 minutes. And then I stayed in the room once he heard it and we gave him just a few more specifics about it. We were in the room for an hour, which is good.
Yeah.
Because
how did you get to the room?
Yeah, well, that's a good question too.
It was Comic-Con. Huh. I was at Comic-Con 2000. I think it was the summer of 2006. I don't think it was 2005. I think it was 2006. And the person I had co-created the show with was there. And then there happened to be somebody from Sci-Fi Channel. That was when they were really actively sort of looking at comic properties, or beginning to really look at comic properties.
Yeah.
And I went there just to hang out with my friend. And when we we had come up with the idea, which at the time, again, was a good one. It was an original idea. And this person just happened to be there at the booth. They said they work for Sci-Fi. We took their card and we called them and we said, yeah, we've got the idea. We've got the Sci-Fi show for you. And then she made a call to Mark Stern and we had the meeting set up. I want to say maybe 2 weeks later, 2 weeks after Comic-Con.
Ian, book us some tickets to Comic-Con. Get us there.
We need something similar. I don't think Comic-Con will help us with what we're trying to do.
Well, you never know. I mean, they cast the net pretty wide at Comic-Con. So, who knows? Matthew, let me ask you this. With a $50 million budget, we don't have that yet. We're going to get it. And, of course, we want more than that for a 2-season series. But let's just play with that budget for a second. Where would you allocate resources to maximize impact? Would you prioritize practical effects, A-list casting, or visual effects heavy sequences?
That's a good question. Honestly, depending on how many vital leads you have. Okay, so this is where a certain philosophy comes into play. With any comic book I made, it was the comic book is the star. The story is the star. So I wasn't so concerned about if I had a star artist, right? Which would be the equivalent of a star in the cast. Let's just say that. In the comic book world, my artist is your Angelina Jolie.
Right.
And I was the writer. Nobody knows me. But the story was the star. So I didn't put a lot of resources. I knew that was where I was going to push everything forward. And with a comic book, I've now got something that's a pre-sold idea. You've got a book, right? You're adapting from a book. Mm-hmm. So you have to, I would take a a gut check, a serious gut check as to how big has the book been? What's the impact? What's the footprint of the book worldwide? And I can't answer that question. You guys know that answer.
Yeah.
But look at the footprint of the book, and if it's just gone, if a property's gone worldwide huge everywhere, then I would definitely pull back on trying to, put a bunch of big stars in it. I didn't really know any of the people in Shogun. Let me put it to you that way. I didn't know a single actor. I'd seen him maybe in a couple things, but I didn't know their names.
Right.
So Shogun is selling Shogun, the novel, right? The James Clavell thing. So depending on what that footprint is of your property, then you might need to evaluate how many stars you need. And maybe you don't need that many, right? That's why right now Hollywood is in such a love affair with IP properties, because they're trying to leverage the story or the book or the whatever it is, that IP as being the star, and not having to rely quite so much on big star casting.
And
You've
star
seen
power,
it just right now, I hate to say this. I hate to sound like a tech head. This is so gross because I'm not one of those people, right? And I've had lots of arguments. So I've been on the other side of what I'm about to say. So I'm kind of a hypocrite. But you know what? Like, people cause problems. Actors are just problems, right? So you want to be careful. You can't. These days, producers, I know some producers, they just sit in a trailer. They don't go on their set. They sit on their phone in their trailer, and they just stay away because they don't want anything to go sideways.
Can I just say, Matthew, before we go any further,
sure.
David, Sincera, he's not talking about you, okay? You're great. Don't worry about it.
That's right. But it's a question of how big of an actor, how many actors do you need for that property? And so I would evaluate that. Me personally, I just want a couple of names in there, really. And sometimes, like with Bad Kids, what we did, we moneyballed the cast. Like, nobody knew any of our people, but the collective juice of that cast was enough to get it over the goal line. So it was a total moneyball. Yeah, it was
that movie Moneyball changed my life in terms of like my philosophy of how I approach.
Mine too.
Yeah.
Yes, mine too. And that's what you kind of look at a cast. Think of your cast in that direction with something like this.
That's good.
Because what you really need, because you want this thing to feel so epic, because it is an epic story, I'm going to push most of my resources into the effects and making it look epic, and like the sheer budget of needing to shoot 2 seasons, right? And you could probably get away, depending on, how much effects you're going to have in it and your cast and how much you're going to shoot them. This whole sort of thing, you want to maybe for 2 seasons, if it was, let's say it was 10 episodes per season as opposed to 12. But if it's 10 episodes, $1 million, $2 million per episode, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Well, as an FX supervisor, how would you approach recreating World War II era settings and spycraft authentically? That is, like practical builds, digital augmentation, or a hybrid?
It's a hybrid. It's a hybrid. And luckily, the great thing about World War II stuff, there's a lot of already like pre-made models made out there of all the aircraft, landcraft. There's some model maker out there that just obsesses about World War II, and he's already modeled it out for you.
I saw a book cover for something about Pearl Harbor, where the aircraft going over the top of Pearl Harbor had German swastikas on them.
Completely that's pretty funny.
Pearl Harbor,
yeah. The model guy was just like, I'm just going to grab this, and
it's an aircraft.
So, it's funny, I wish I could. I think the movie was called Beautiful Dreamer, and I worked on that just on the effects side when I was and I was still going through the Noman machine, and there was a kid who brought in his laptop, and him by himself, he made some of the most awesome World War II dogfight sequences I've ever seen in my life. And it was just him. He did it all. Cut it together, put the sound in the planes. He did POVs, inside the turret, as the planes are coming, like he did it all. And it was one guy, and it was as good as Pearl Harbor, the movie. So what I'm saying is World War II is it's going to work for you in the effects department.
Yeah, I bet. I can imagine.
I mean, Game of Thrones, a very large part of that is visual effects, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
huge.
I think the budget on average for Game of Thrones episode was about 5-6 million.
That's correct.
What percentage of that budget would be visual effects?
I would think edging up on 3/4. I know
75%, really?
3/4. Yeah. I mean, I guess the actual production, like shooting it, the time to shoot it and everything is also a big chunk of that. I just know that the cast got more expensive as the seasons went, right? Because you have to renegotiate as the seasons go. And so they're hitting season 3. And then that all of a sudden you get a big bump with the cast. And so it goes to up there. So
that's a problem you want to have, right?
Oh, sure. You want to be, you absolutely want to be going into season 6 and 7, right? So it probably increased, but I know that those fighting sequences with the dragons and the castles and everything that's going on, they get up there.
Where's the cost with visual effects? Is it just an army of people that you have for the rendering of the effect?
Yes. Just so you know, like it's like kind of a thing to think about is that the more organic something you're trying to make in effects, a person, a creature, a monster, a wolf, whatever it is, the more organic, the more difficult, the more time, the more money it's going to take. Doing armor and cars and planes, no sweat.
Well, what's an example of visual effects work you've done that looked expensive but was achieved smarter than people realized?
Which was much smarter than what was something? Probably in Bad Kids Go to Hell. Like it was just like we made that movie for nothing, and it was. I'm trying to think of a shot. There was a couple shots where you didn't realize it was a special effect because they had torn down the set for the library and we had to go back there to like shoot a couple pickups and there was no set. So luckily somebody had a few pictures of the set. And so they just threw up like basic geometry. And so it looked like it was the set in the background, but it wasn't. It was just it was literally like pictures. And like this, like a hard corner picture, and it looked like the set. And then they shot the guy against green screen and threw him in there, and they kind of blurred the background, and and it was perfectly inserted into the film.
Nice,
and that cost nothing.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Oh,
there's a saying, and they would say this in Noman, and I love this saying. I love this in effects. The saying is, "If it looks good, it is good."
There you go. We've only got a couple of minutes. I want to get one last question in here. What's the most unexpected creative risk you've taken on a big project that paid off?
That's a good question. I don't know if it was necessarily a big project. It was a lot of money, a lot of my own money. I did a comic book that's based on a true story. And it was the title. It was really just the title. I changed the title. Everyone was like, "Oh, you can't say this. You can't put that in the title." And I did. And that's what made it sell. It was a comic book called Hot Valley Days. And they were saying, "Oh, you got to call it Hot Valley Days." I said, "Yeah, I'm going to call it Hot Valley Days and Cocaine Nights."
And Cocaine Nights. That's right. Yeah.
and I mean, you know,
I wanted to, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I want to read that. I want to see that.
Yeah. So
No,
I don't know. I mean, that's not a, huge, but it wasn't a big budget, but it was.
Well, your own money was in it. So,
when you're rolling your own money, your own cash on, something, it's in the, the thousands of dollars. You need to make sure it's going to stick, because everyone, was just concerned. And I turned to them and I said, you clearly don't know what's out there, what millennials and Gen Zers are watching then, because this is a, sweet summer breeze compared to how, hardcore some things are out there that they're watching and listening to. So.
I'm a Gen Xer, and it hit my sweet spot. I was like, this looks great.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we got to wrap it up. We are under some time constraints today. We could, Ian, I know I could speak for Ian on this. We would love to have you back.
I'd love to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Again, I can,
I
can talk to a lot of.
Scratch the surface.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I feel like there's a lot to talk about with AI, because it will definitely be making your production easier in many ways.
Ian, any parting words?
Just Matthew, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. And we have just scratched the surface. We have to have at least one more call. And
for sure.
At some point in the future, we all have to get in the room and really have a great time, because you're our type of guy,
Great.
I was going to say, I think we need to get him on the payroll. Are you kidding?
It's can do. And Mark and I were just talking about this before we got started, and there's this thing about the universe. It's sort of opening up and making this happen, and there's a level of positivity about what we're trying to do that is just becoming a tsunami. It's really quite strange.
That's good. I love World War II. I did my World War II story, and I mean, based on a true story. I love World War II stories. It's fascinating what was going on.
This is a good one. This is a really good one.
Yeah, so many good things, crazy things are going on.
When you get into the layers of this story, it's amazing. Yeah. Well, we got to leave it there, folks. Till next time.
To find out more about the book, visit tjswar.com, and to buy it, click on the Amazon link below. So follow us, join us as we create TJ's War, the $50 million TV series.
My name is Jamie, and for most of the 1980s, I helped deliver over 3.5 million kilos of cocaine to every major studio, record label, and rock band in Los Angeles County.
So there were a lot of rock bands back then, so I bet the money was pretty good.
Yeah, the money, but I really like metal music.
But you wanted to get out.
I tried, but when you're the #1 salesperson in LA for a cocaine cartel, it's not that easy. And unfortunately, my crew, they weren't a bunch of rocket scientists, so when you're slinging cocaine to the entire music industry, including our flights to the East Coast, it was just a matter of time before the music came to an end. When the whole thing came to a stop, it came to a stop quickly. And everyone, Jimmy, Zach, Eric, Matthias, they all went down hard.